What's up, everyone? Tony from the Cold Case Project, back again. And today, what I want to run with you over is all content shared in these videos is readily available in any Google search. Now, with that said, I take this content, have it rewritten, and upon rewriting it, put it in these videos to spread the word on the thousands and thousands of cold cases of men and women throughout the United States that are just forgotten, and I give this platform to them so their cases and their stories can be told. Now, in addition to that, if you look down below in the description, you're going to see some brand new t-shirt and coffee cup designs I've actually gotten from a couple of my subscribers who have over the years have been giving me some awesome fan art. So with that said, I'm offering a 20% discount code down below if you check that out, and splitting proceeds with them because they are awesome. Been watching me for quite some time, and I definitely think they deserve to be rewarded for some of the work they do on top of being full-time employees also. So once again, if you have any recommendations or any suggestions, comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the video. Like, subscribe. I'm out. Peace.
April Reed was reported missing by her family on March 20th, 2021, after weeks passed without any contact from her. By that point, the last confirmed sighting of her was on February 15th, when she withdrew cash from an ATM in Hickory, North Carolina. 10 days later, on February 25th, she used her food stamp card at a location in Hickory, marking the last known financial transaction in her name. The final communication her family had with her was around February 28th, and after that, April simply vanished. She had spoken about traveling to South Carolina to visit friends, but with no vehicle of her own, it remains unclear how she intended to get there. April was known to rely on rides from family and friends, but no one has come forward to say they helped her make the trip. After her family filed the missing person report, a new lead surfaced when a healthcare worker reached out to the police. The worker, who had been assigned to help April, revealed that she, too, had lost contact with her and had even gone to April's apartment in an attempt to find her. What she found inside disturbed her. The apartment was in disarray, which she found so unusual that she took photographs of the scene. This was not how April normally lived. When April's sister later went to check the apartment for herself, she also noticed that things seemed out of place. It looked as if someone had been inside, moving objects around. While there were no clear signs of a violent struggle, what was missing was just as concerning as what remained. April's belongings were still there, including her phone and her favorite jacket, items she was never known to leave behind. When police attempted to track her movements through her cell phone, they discovered it was no longer in service, cutting off another potential lead. Investigators soon uncovered troubling information. In the time leading up to her disappearance, April had been in contact with a man who had a serious criminal history. This individual had been charged with multiple violent felonies in the past, including kidnapping and assault with intent to kill. When questioned, he admitted to knowing April and claimed he had given her money to travel, but beyond that, he denied any involvement in her disappearance. He also told authorities that April had been having heated arguments with another individual before she went missing, though it remains unclear whether this played a role in her vanishing. At the time of her disappearance, April was surviving off disability payments. However, her bank account has remained untouched since she was last seen, and her food stamp card, which still had funds on it, has not been used since the February 25th transaction in Hickory. To those who knew her, these were ominous signs. Despite her past struggles with drugs and alcohol, April had been trying to turn her life around, and it was out of character for her to cut off all contact, particularly with her family. Investigators have publicly stated that they believe criminal activity played a role in April's disappearance, though they have stopped short of concluding that she is deceased. They believe there is a possibility that she could still be alive, but in hiding. Still, without any new sightings, financial activity, or phone records to trace, her case remains wide open. On January 23, 2019, 29-year-old Daniel Allen Price vanished under suspicious circumstances from Lexington, North Carolina. A resident of a house on the 100 block of Pearl Drive near High Rock Lake, Price lived with two roommates, Natasha Myers and Christopher Ryan Burgess. What should have been an ordinary day turned into a baffling mystery when Daniel left a long, disturbing voicemail for his mother shortly before midnight, his last known communication. Since then, he has never been seen or heard from again. Price's last known activity began with a series of communications that painted an unsettling picture. Around 11:45 p.m. on January 23rd, he left an ominous voicemail for his mother. Though the contents of this message have not been publicly disclosed in detail, authorities have described it as very long and disturbing. His girlfriend last heard from him via a phone call at 1:15 a.m. and a text message at 1:40 a.m. on January 24th. This would be the final confirmed contact from Price. The next day, when his girlfriend was unable to reach him, she reported him missing to authorities. When investigators arrived at Daniel's residence in response to the missing person report, they discovered his vehicle in the driveway. However, the house was empty. Both of his roommates, Natasha Myers and Christopher Ryan Burgess, were nowhere to be found, and Burgess's red Chevrolet S10 pickup truck was also missing. Oddly, just a short time later, Myers and Burgess were reported missing as well. On January 27th, for days after Price's disappearance, Myers and Burgess resurfaced, claiming they had taken a short trip to Tennessee. However, Daniel was still nowhere to be found, and their explanations about his whereabouts were vague. When questioned, the roommates claimed that the last time they saw Price was at an Oakwood Acres home near High Rock Lake, a property Price co-owned with Burgess. According to them, they parted ways with him in the early hours of January 23rd. Yet, this timeline raises concerns. How could they have been unaware of his fate when he was reported missing almost immediately after their alleged last interaction? Several unsettling details emerged in the investigation. Price left behind critical personal belongings, including his identification, phone charger, coat, and extra clothes. If he had intended to leave voluntarily, why would he abandon essential items? He was known for maintaining frequent contact with his mother and girlfriend. His sudden silence was deeply out of character. Investigators later learned that Price and Burgess had a complicated history, with alleged altercations between them prior to Price's disappearance. Just 3 months after Daniel disappeared, on April 26, 2019, Christopher Ryan Burgess was arrested in Lexington, North Carolina. He was charged with a series of violent crimes, including second-degree kidnapping assault by pointing a gun assault on a child under 12 years, old misdemeanor child abuse, 3 counts of misdemeanor communicating threats, 2 counts of assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill, 2 counts of shooting into an occupied vehicle. Authorities stated that these charges stemmed from 2 separate incidents that occurred in 2018 but were reported in early 2019. Given Burgess's history of violent behavior, many have speculated that he may have had a direct hand in Price's disappearance. Family members of Daniel have openly voiced their suspicions, noting that Burgess had allegedly assaulted Daniel in the past. However, no formal charges have been brought against him in relation to Price's case. As the years pass, questions about Daniel's disappearance continue to linger. Did something happen at the Oakwood Acres home that led to his disappearance? Was his final voicemail a plea for help or a cryptic warning? Did his roommates, particularly Burgess, know more than they admitted? Could Price have fallen victim to foul play at the hands of someone close to him? Despite extensive searches and ongoing efforts from law enforcement, Daniel Allen Price has never been located. His mother and girlfriend continue to push for answers, refusing to let his case fade into obscurity. They believe someone knows what happened to him and hope that the right person will come forward with information. If you have any knowledge of Daniel Allen Price's whereabouts or the circumstances of his disappearance, please contact the Davidson County Sheriff's Office or the North Carolina Bureau of Investigation. Abby Lynn Patterson was last seen on the morning of September 5, 2017, in Lumberton, North Carolina. At just 20 years old, she had recently completed a drug rehabilitation program in Florida and had returned home to visit her mother. That morning, she told her mother she was running a few errands and would return within an hour. She left her home on East 9th Street, walked toward Inglewood Avenue, and got into a brown Buick sedan. That was the last time anyone in her family saw her. The driver of the car was later identified and interviewed by authorities, claiming to have dropped Abby off at another location. Police have never disclosed where that was. Despite numerous searches and continued pleas from her family, Abby remains missing. Her case is further complicated by a troubling pattern in Lumberton at the time. 3 other women have been found dead under suspicious circumstances in the months before Abby's disappearance. The proximity of these cases raised questions about potential connections. However, law enforcement has maintained that Abby's case is unrelated. Now, over 7 years later, her family continues their relentless pursuit of answers, and the search for Abby Lynn Patterson remains one of the most haunting, unresolved cases in North Carolina. Abby was known for her vibrant personality, infectious laughter, and open heart. Friends and family describe her as a light in their lives, someone who always looked for the good in others. However, like many young people, she faced personal struggles, including addiction. But before her disappearance, Abby was fighting to take her life back. She had completed a rehabilitation program in Florida and was working on rebuilding her future. Abby was close to her mother, Samantha Lovett, and the two spoke daily, sometimes multiple times. Her return to Lumberton in 2017 was meant to be a brief but joyful reunion. She wanted to reconnect with family and visit old friends. By all accounts, she was in good spirits during her visit. Physically, Abby was 5 feet 7 inches, approximately 140 pounds, with long brown hair. She had a distinctive tattoo of 3 small birds on her shoulder and a large birthmark on the back of her thigh. These details have been crucial in missing person alerts and identification efforts. Hay raced the timeline of Abby's disappearance. Labor Day weekend 2017. Abby spent the long holiday weekend with her family. They visited the beach, laughed, and enjoyed each other's company. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, and she appeared genuinely happy to be home. Tuesday, September 5th, 2017, on the morning of September 5th, Abby planned to accompany her mother to work. However, she later changed her mind, telling her mom she wanted to meet up with an old high school friend and run some errands. At approximately 11:30 a.m., Abby sent a text to her mother saying, "I will be back in 1 hour." She was last seen by neighbors and family walking down the street and getting into a brown Buick Park Avenue. By the time an hour had passed, Abby had not returned. Her mother texted her but received no response. Calls to Abby's phone went straight to voicemail, something highly unusual for her. Samantha knew that even if Abby's phone had died, she would have borrowed someone else's to call home. With each passing hour, Samantha's concern deepened. By 6 p.m., she officially reported Abby missing to the Lumberton Police Department. Lumberton Police and the FBI launched an investigation, tracking Abby's last known movements and speaking to the person who picked her up. While police have not named this individual publicly, they have confirmed that they were able to piece together much of Abby's activities that day, except for one missing piece. They stated that they know where Abby went but lack the final details to locate her. They urged the public to come forward with any information. Just months before Abby's disappearance, 3 women, Rhonda Jones, Kristen Christina Bennett, and Megan Oxendine, were found dead in suspicious circumstances within a short distance of each other in Lumberton. Their bodies were all found naked and in various stages of decomposition. Like Abby, these women had histories of drug use. Despite these apparent similarities, police have insisted there is no connection between these cases and Abby's disappearance. The FBI and local police have conducted multiple searches over the years, particularly along Alamac Road in Lumberton. While they have not disclosed what led them to this location, it is significant that they continue to focus on this area. Abby's family has also been deeply involved in search efforts. In February 2018, Samantha and others posted missing person flyers around Lumberton. only to find that within hours, someone had ripped them down. This chilling discovery only deepened the family's concerns that someone in the community knew what happened to Abby. In 2019, Abby's family and volunteers canvassed Allamack Road, knocking on doors, asking questions, and distributing flyers. That same year, the FBI increased the reward for information leading to Abby's whereabouts to $10,000. Some theories and unanswered questions include who was in the car. Authorities know who was driving the brown Buick, but they have never disclosed their identity. Why? Did this person refuse to cooperate? Or is there another reason police are withholding their name? Why is Allamack Road significant? Repeated searches have taken place on Allamack Road, suggesting law enforcement has received credible tips about this location. Was Abby last seen there? Could her remains be nearby? Could someone be covering for the person responsible? Both law enforcement and Abby's family strongly believe that someone in the community knows what happened, but has remained silent. Fear, loyalty, or even threats may be keeping witnesses from coming forward. Over the years, Abby's mother has continued to advocate for answers. In a heart-wrenching Facebook post on the first anniversary of Abby's disappearance, she wrote, "A year ago today, that was our last picture together. We laughed all day long. This was the perfect day. What I would get to go back to this very moment. You are so very missed, my sweet Abby. I love you more than words could ever say. We are not giving up. I feel you with me every day. I promise we will find you." The pain of not knowing where Abby is or what happened to her continues to weigh on her loved ones. Despite the time that has passed, they remain hopeful that someone will come forward with the missing piece of information needed to solve the case. As of March 2025, the case remains open and active. The Lumberton Police and the FBI continue to urge anyone with information to come forward. Abby's family continues to fight for answers, refusing to let her story be forgotten. If you have any information about the disappearance of Abby Lynn Patterson, please contact the Lumberton Police Department at 671-3845. On August 13, 2001, Tamika Shantae Pridgeon, a 16-year-old high school student from La Grange, North Carolina, vanished without trace. Described by her family as a loving and free-spirited young woman, Tamika's sudden disappearance left her small community shaken and desperate for answers. More than 2 decades later, the case remains unsolved, lingering as an open wound for her loved ones. Tamika was last seen leaving her home in La Grange, a quiet town in Lenoir County. She had spent the day with family and appeared to be in good spirits. According to reports, she was expected to meet up with a friend later that evening, but she never arrived. Her family grew concerned when she did not return home. At first, some speculated that Tamika had run away, but those closest to her rejected this idea. She had no history of running away, and there was nothing in her recent behavior to suggest she was planning to leave. She had left behind personal belongings, including her purse and extra clothing, indicating she had not intended to be gone for long. When Tamika failed to come home the next morning, her family reported her missing. Law enforcement initiated a search, but with limited resources and no clear evidence of foul play, the case quickly became frustrating for investigators and heartbreaking for her loved ones. Authorities canvassed the area, speaking with friends, neighbors, and acquaintances. Several individuals claimed to have seen Tamika on the evening of her disappearance, but the details were inconsistent. Some witnesses stated she had been walking alone near a gas station, while others mentioned seeing her in the company of an unidentified individual. One of the most intriguing leads in the case involved the dark-colored sedan seen near the area where Tamika was last spotted. A witness recalled seeing a young woman matching her description speaking to the driver. It was unclear whether she entered the vehicle voluntarily or if anything suspicious occurred. Despite efforts to track down the car or its driver, investigators never identified the person in question. Over time, speculation grew that Tamika may have been harmed by someone she trusted. Some believed that an older acquaintance or friend may have been involved in her disappearance. Law enforcement explored multiple possibilities, including the idea that she had been lured away under false pretenses. However, no definitive evidence ever emerged to support this theory. Tamika's disappearance bore similarities to other cases of missing young women in eastern North Carolina. The region had seen a troubling number of unsolved cases involving teenage girls vanishing under mysterious circumstances. Though no official links were made between Tamika's case and others, some investigators and amateur sleuths have speculated that a serial predator could have been operating in the area during that time. Despite the lack of answers, Tamika's family never stopped searching for her. Her mother, in particular, became an outspoken advocate, pushing for renewed investigations and greater media attention. Over the years, she has pleaded for anyone with information to come forward, emphasizing that even the smallest detail could help bring Tamika home. The case has been reopened multiple times, with authorities reviewing old evidence and conducting new interviews. However, the trail remains cold, with no new substantial leads emerging in recent years. One of the most difficult aspects of the case is the complete absence of evidence. There has never been a confirmed sighting of Tamika after the night she disappeared, nor has there been any discovery of remains that might indicate a tragic fate. This lack of closure has left some holding on to the hope that she may still be alive somewhere, waiting to be found. If you have any information about the disappearance of Tamika Pridgeon, please contact the Lenoir County Sheriff's Office. On February 22, 2010, 18-year-old Jalisa Chantel Reynolds vanished from the small town of Scotland Neck, North Carolina. A shy yet kind-hearted young woman, Jalisa was in the midst of earning her GED at Halifax Community College and spent much of her free time connecting with people online. That fateful day, she logged into Facebook from two different locations, the Scotland Neck Memorial Library and a residence just outside of town. By the time the sun set, Jalisa had disappeared without a trace. Jalisa started her day at the Scotland Neck Memorial Library, a place she frequented to access the internet. She logged off her Facebook account at 11 a.m., but no one knows what she did in the next 2.5 hours. At 1:40 p.m., she accessed Facebook again, but this time it was from the residence of a man named Dwayne Hosea Davis, a convicted sex offender living in the 200 block of Cemetery Road, approximately 1.5 miles outside of town. Authorities believe that Jalisa left Davis's home between 2 o'clock and 3 p.m. What happened after that remains a mystery. Dwayne Hosea Davis was no ordinary man in the community. He was a registered offender with a violent past. In 1994, Davis had been convicted of rape and served nearly 7 years in prison. Despite his criminal history, Jalisa seemingly felt comfortable enough to visit his home. In a media interview, Davis admitted to knowing Jalisa. He acknowledged that she had visited his home, used his computer, and even spent time with his horses. However, he insisted that she had left his house unharmed, walking away on her own. To this day, Davis has never been charged in connection with her disappearance. While Davis's claims seem straightforward, certain details make the situation feel deeply unsettling. How did Jalisa get to his home? The walk from the library to his house, while technically possible, would have taken around 38 minutes, an unusually long journey for someone who could have easily returned home instead. Rumors swirled around the town, suggesting that Jalisa may have been picked up by someone in a pickup truck near the library before arriving at Davis's home. If true, who was this person, and why was Jalisa taken there? And if Davis was telling the truth, and she had left his house unharmed, who was the last person to see her alive? Scotland Neck, a small town of just 2,000 residents, was a place where people felt safe. Crime was not an everyday concern. The town was known for its strong sense of community and its beloved bird park, Sylvan Heights. When Jalisa disappeared, it sent shockwaves through the town, leaving residents questioning whether their sense of security was just an illusion. Before Jalisa's disappearance, it was rare to hear about young women vanishing in Scotland Neck. But this case was different. It was personal. People knew Jalisa. Her family was deeply rooted in the community. It wasn't something that could be ignored. Some have drawn parallels between Jaleesa's case and the crimes of Antoine Pittman, a serial predator known as the Seven Bridges Killer. Pittman was arrested in September 2009, just months before Jaleesa went missing. While there is no evidence linking Pittman to her disappearance, his crimes raised troubling questions about the dangers lurking in eastern North Carolina at that time. One unsettling fact stands out. Christine Boone, one of Pittman's victims, was found dead less than a mile from where Jaleesa was last seen. Could there be a connection between these cases? Did Pittman and Davis know each other? And if Pittman was responsible for multiple murders, did he have knowledge of what happened to Jaleesa? In June 2010, nearly 4 months after Jaleesa disappeared, police received a series of disturbing 911 calls originating from the area where she was last seen. Authorities reported receiving 14 separate calls, some of which featured a disguised voice claiming to be a woman in distress. In other calls, the sound of gunshots could be heard in the background. The origin of these calls? Near or at Davis's residence. The bizarre nature of these calls prompted law enforcement to obtain a search warrant and raid Davis's home. Though they did not find evidence directly linking him to Jaleesa's disappearance, they did recover multiple cell phones, one of which reportedly stood out, a pastel-colored device. Some speculate that this phone may have belonged to Jaleesa, but no official confirmation was ever given. Over a decade has passed since Jaleesa Reynolds vanished, yet there have been no arrests, no charges, and no major leads. No other women have gone missing under similar circumstances in Scotland next since then. The fact that she disappeared so suddenly, with no evidence of where she went, only deepens the mystery. Law enforcement has searched bodies of water, wooded areas, and abandoned structures. Yet, Jaleesa remains missing. Jaleesa's family deserves answers. Her mother, Bernice Reynolds, has spent years searching for the truth, holding on to hope that her daughter may still be found. She has pleaded for more resources, more attention, and more urgency from law enforcement. But so far, the case remains cold. Anyone with information regarding Jaleesa's disappearance is urged to contact the Scotland Neck Police Department or the Halifax County Sheriff's Office. On a sweltering summer afternoon, July 31st, 1975, in Charlotte, North Carolina, 21-year-old Denise Annette Newsom Porch stepped out of her apartment at the Yorktown Apartments complex where she served as resident manager, never to be seen again. This case, now approaching its 50th anniversary with no resolution, stands as the oldest unsolved missing persons case in Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department history. The complete absence of physical evidence, the mysterious circumstances surrounding her disappearance, and the potential connection to a notorious serial killer have transformed this into one of the most perplexing and haunting unsolved mysteries in American criminal history. Denise Porch's life before that fateful day paints a picture of a young woman full of promise and happiness. Born March 25, 1954 in the small town of Denton, North Carolina to Emery and Joyce Newsom, Denise grew up as the youngest of 3 sisters in a close-knit family. Described by those who knew her as shy but kind-hearted, Denise excelled academically, graduating from Denton High School in 1972, where she frequently appeared on the honor roll. She continued her education at Davidson County Community College, earning an associate's degree with excellent marks in 1974. That same year, on July 14th, she married Rodney Dean Porch in a ceremony at Clear Springs United Methodist Church, the same church where her father's funeral had been held just 2 years prior following his sudden death from a heart attack. The young couple settled in Charlotte, where Dean worked for Liberty Life Insurance while Denise took a position as resident manager at Yorktown Apartments on Tyvola Road. By all accounts, the Porches were happily married and building their life together. They had just celebrated their first wedding anniversary with a beach trip and had tickets to see Seals and Crofts in concert on August 2nd, 1975, plans that would never come to fruition. Friends and family consistently described Denise as responsible, cautious, and deeply devoted to her husband and family. These character traits make her sudden disappearance all the more baffling. The events of July 31st, 1975, began normally enough. Dean left for work in the morning while Denise remained at the apartment complex to handle her managerial duties. As resident manager, one of her primary responsibilities was showing vacant units to prospective renters, a task that would prove fateful. Between 2 o'clock and 3 p.m., Denise was seen showing an apartment to two men, one later identified as Mark Beaver. According to Beaver's statement to police, while viewing the unit, another man and woman entered inquiring about renting. When Beaver left around 3 p.m., Denise was still speaking with these individuals. The last confirmed sighting of Denise occurred at approximately 3:20 p.m. when resident Ronnie Eubanks observed her walking with an unidentified man toward a dark green or blue compact car. Eubanks noted that Denise appeared familiar with the man, their interaction seeming casual rather than forced. The man opened the passenger door for Denise before they drove away. This mundane, everyday act, a resident manager showing a property, became the final moment anyone could attest to seeing Denise porch alive. When Dean returned home around 8 p.m., he immediately noticed something was amiss. A note on the door indicated Denise had gone to show an apartment, but her purse, wallet, and car keys remained inside their unit. The television and air conditioner were still running, suggesting she had intended to return shortly. Only two items were missing: the master keys to vacant apartments and Denise's logbook of prospective renters. Dean's growing concern turned to alarm as he searched the complex, speaking with neighbors and the assistant manager, Pamela Rigg, who confirmed seeing Denise with a man earlier that afternoon, but assumed she had returned. By 8:30 p.m., with no sign of his wife, Dean contacted law enforcement. The responding officers found no evidence of a struggle in the apartment or surrounding area. There were no signs of forced entry, no blood, no disturbed belongings, nothing to indicate foul play had occurred on the premises. Yet the complete absence of Denise, coupled with the missing keys and logbook, suggested something sinister had transpired. The initial police investigation unfolded rapidly, but yielded frustratingly few leads. Bloodhounds tracked Denise's scent to the parking lot where it abruptly ended, as if she had entered a vehicle and been driven away. Searches of nearby fields and wooded areas proved fruitless. Investigators interviewed numerous residents and reviewed the few available witness accounts, but the descriptions of the mysterious man varied slightly and were too vague to produce a definitive suspect. One promising lead emerged when a woman reported seeing a woman matching Denise's description either fall or be pushed from a moving vehicle on Interstate 77 near the Sleepy Hollow Road exit, about a mile from the apartments. The witness described seeing a man chase the woman across the median before both disappeared from view. However, an extensive search of the area found no evidence corroborating this account, and investigators eventually dismissed it as unrelated. In September 1975, the case took a bizarre turn when Denise's family began receiving ransom demands from a man named Edsel Howard Brown, who promised Denise's safe return in exchange for $50,000. Police quickly determined Brown was an opportunist with no real knowledge of the crime, and he was arrested on extortion charges. This false lead only deepened the mystery surrounding Denise's true fate. As months turned into years with no breakthroughs, the case grew colder. Then, in the mid-1980s, a potential connection emerged to one of the most notorious serial killers in the region's history, Larry Gene Bell. Bell, who lived just 300 yards from Yorktown Apartments in July 1975, would later be convicted and executed for the 1985 kidnappings and murders of 17-year-old Sharon Smith and 9-year-old Deborah Helmick in South Carolina. Investigators noted disturbing parallels between Denise's disappearance and Bell's known methods. He often posed as a legitimate service worker to gain victims' trust, targeted women near their homes, and had a history of making taunting phone calls to victims' families, much like the extortion attempt in Denise's case. Bell's potential involvement gained further credence when investigators learned he had abruptly moved from the area shortly after Denise disappeared. Additionally, he was linked to several other unsolved disappearances in the region, including that of Sandy Cornett in 1984. However, Without physical evidence or a confession, authorities could never definitively connect Bell to Denise's case. His execution in 1996 extinguished any hope of learning the truth from the killer himself. The Porch and Newsom families endured unimaginable anguish in the decades following Denise's disappearance. Her mother, Joyce, dedicated her life to finding answers, passing away in 1997 without ever learning her daughter's fate. Denise was declared legally dead in 1982, though no remains were ever found to provide closure. Her husband, Dean, profoundly affected by the loss, struggled with alcoholism and legal troubles in subsequent years before his death in 2011. Today, nearly 50 years later, the disappearance of Denise Porch remains one of the most baffling unsolved mysteries in North Carolina history. The complete lack of physical evidence, the absence of a crime scene, and the frustrating near misses in the investigation have left law enforcement and the family with more questions than answers. Was Denise a victim of Larry Jean Bell? Did she encounter another predator posing as a potential renter? Or does the truth lie in some undiscovered scenario? Modern forensic techniques, including advanced DNA analysis and genetic genealogy, offer glimmers of hope that this decades-old mystery might one day be solved. Until then, the case remains unsolved. On a cold January day in 2013, Gerald Pollard was last seen standing in the front yard of his automotive shop in Person County, North Carolina. A self-employed mechanic, Pollard was known for his skill with cars and his friendly demeanor. He often worked late into the evening, tinkering with engines and chatting with customers who stopped by his shop. 30 hours after he was last seen, Pollard was reported missing. His wife, accustomed to his occasional short disappearances, had initially thought little of his absence. He had been known to drop out of sight for a day or two, but as hours stretched into days with no word from him, concern grew. Friends and family members searched for any sign of him, but there was nothing, no phone calls, no financial activity, no clues. Gerald Pollard had seemingly vanished into thin air. For years, Pollard's disappearance baffled investigators. There were no immediate suspects, and while rumors swirled, there was no hard evidence to suggest what had happened to him. Then, in November 2017, a shocking development came to light. Pollard's brother-in-law, Scott Gerald Sikora, was charged with murder and kidnapping in connection with the case. Authorities alleged that Sikora was responsible for Pollard's disappearance and likely death. The sheriff overseeing the case called it one of the worst he had encountered in his entire career. The charges sent ripples through the small community. Those who knew both men struggled to reconcile the accusations with the relationships they had observed. While some found the charges unsurprising, others were skeptical. As the legal proceedings unfolded, disturbing details emerged, details that suggested this might not be the first time Scott Sikora had been connected to a missing person. In August 2019, however, the prosecution made a stunning announcement. They were voluntarily dismissing the charges against Sikora. They cited a lack of forensic evidence and the unreliability of a key witness. The case had been built largely on circumstantial evidence, and without stronger proof, they could not proceed. The dismissal was made without prejudice, meaning that should new evidence surface, Sikora could be charged again. Sikora's legal troubles didn't end there. His past relationships came under renewed scrutiny as investigators began to re-examine two eerily similar cases. Two of his former wives, Elizabeth Sikora and Helen Darlene Fuller, had both vanished under mysterious circumstances in 1983. The fact that two women connected to him had gone missing, independent of each other, raised red flags for law enforcement. Helen Fuller, just 19 years old at the time of her disappearance, was last seen on November 24, 1983, in Durham, North Carolina. She had been living in Florida with Phil Skip Parcelli, a real estate broker, and his family. That Thanksgiving, Fuller and Parcelli traveled to Durham to spend the holiday with her parents. But before the Thanksgiving meal was served, the couple decided to visit Fuller's grandmother. They never arrived. They were never heard from again. A few days later, Authorities found the couple's rental car abandoned at a Mexican-themed attraction off Interstate 95, just south of the North Carolina-South Carolina border. While there were no signs of foul play in the vehicle, investigators found an ominous clue inside, a belt buckle emblazoned with the emblem of the Outlaws motorcycle gang. Fuller had left behind all of her personal belongings at her parents' home. While her family reported her missing, no official report was ever filed for Parcelli. To this day, no one has been charged in Fuller's disappearance, and no trace of her or Parcelli has ever been found. The connection between Sakura and these long unsolved disappearances has only deepened the mystery surrounding Gerald Pollard's case. As of now, Scott Sakura remains a person of interest in Pollard's case, and authorities have not ruled out his involvement. However, without concrete evidence, the case remains in limbo. Investigators continue to urge anyone with information to come forward, hoping that one day they will find the missing pieces of the puzzle that could bring justice to Pollard, Fuller, and the others whose fates remain unknown. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Gerald Pollard, Helen Fuller, or Elizabeth Sakura, please contact the Person County Sheriff's Office or the Durham Police Department. These cases remain open, and authorities believe that even the smallest tip could be the key to unraveling the truth.